We go with September wrap up. I quickly make mention of all the numbers that we have done this month from a number of listings and also a number of properties that have closed. And I take you through just the highlight reel of a few of those ones that stood out to me. So either way is that we'll take you through that, but also I make a bit of a warning there as well that we've got to be careful of, people thinking that, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies on the other end of the election and also the interest rates. So we've got to be conscious of the message that we put out there, because I really do believe that if it is going to be rainbows and butterflies, you're going to get a high influx of people putting their property on the marketplace, which means that property is going to be diluted, so to speak. So I think that we've just got to be real with our sellers and ask them many questions about, hey, what if we do achieve you more money? What does that help you do? Make sure they're very clear cut on that. Make sure that they do need that. Make sure that they understand what are the repercussions of waiting. And if it isn't rainbows and butterflies on the other end of the election, okay, into the early stage of next year, what happens? Hopefully you enjoy. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. I can't believe September's come to a complete close already. It's going past so quickly this year. I had a piece of paper on my desk that I was going through, and at the beginning of the year, saying that I needed to complete. It's a summary of something to do with I don't know. It was anyway, whatever it is. It was, I think it's for like the estate planner, and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh God, that was like the date on that was beginning of February, and I haven't done it. It was just sitting on my desk, one of those things that you sort of walk past, like, it's fine, I'll do it whenever. Like, it's not an urgent thing, and whatever it is, probably should actually do it. Anyway, guys, September wrap up. September, I think I described August as shit. September's been a little better. I just, the interesting part about it now is the delusion that I'm getting from a great deal of people around the fact that, interest rates have dropped. The market's going to start picking up. Wait till you see. Let's wait until after the election. And my comment back is always, well, guys, what if it doesn't? And they just don't know what to say, because there's a couple of things. Like I think that's our responsibility as people that are. I'm always going to push against the grain. I have no problem leaning into the discomfort of a conversation. And well, what if it doesn't? What do we do? And they're like, we'll just put it on the market after. Well, I think everybody will, and you'll be even in more competition at that point. Again, let's say the marketplace goes up 10%. Your property's at $2 million. It's a $200,000 pop. What would you do with the additional $200,000? Now, again, some people have a legitimate answer to it. Other people are just like, I don't know. So again, I think that it's just asking questions, and it's not trying to be passive aggressive in any way, shape or form. We want to make sure that, we're just making sure we're asking questions so that people are thinking through. But let's talk about numbers. 68 was, I think, the total number of listings that we did. It might be a little higher than that, but I'm just looking at my sheet here at the moment, because that number doesn't include properties that we've just we put them to market and we're like, hey guys, this isn't going to work out. See you later. Which we do pretty often, because, sellers will be really amped up, and then you'll get the first low offer in the situation, which is part of the auction process to create social validation, and then they'll freak out and all of this stuff. And it's like, hey, look, guys, with all due respect, I just don't think it'll work out. That's one of the things that we've made sure that in the month of September, we really put our foot down. Like, we understand a circumstance pretty quickly of whether or not it's going to be a successful auction based on the response of sellers, but also based on the agents. Like, guys, if you've got an agent that doesn't want to even go out there and show property, I'm just like, yeah, no, this is no good. Thank you so much. It's just not going to work out, because they expect real estate by magic. And at the end of the day, the level of engagement, a lockbox on the front door, or a super box of people going direct and not even having to phone you to ask questions, just making assumptions of the auction process, and then not being able to follow up with these people and get their actual information and everything along those lines. Like, no one wanting to do open houses, or them not even wanting to go out to the property and deal with it. Those are the biggest red flags for us at the moment. So again, we don't need the practice, so we need to be protective of our time and protective of our success rate as well. Obviously, a lot of those auctions, as we've listed them, are coming up into the month of October for the auctions. Our auction dates are the 10th and the 31st. But a couple of standout results. Total closed that we had was, I think for the month was, 68. No, sorry, that's the listing number. No, yeah, 67. 67. Let's talk about some of the standouts, though. First one that I want to talk about is Old Honda Road in Woodside. Now, this closed right on the cusp of September, August, but I think it was the one that I was going to mention, but it didn't. But this property here, Old Honda Road, was previously on the marketplace for a very long time and had some substantial landsliding and some real big engineer issues on the property itself. It'd been listed on the marketplace for a long period of time, had multiple price reductions. A lot of people just were not interested in going out and seeing the property because of the situation. It was like we had to disclose it. We have to make sure that we mentioned it and everything like that. So again, we put a bidding to start from price at a price that we knew that the seller would pretty much accept. It wasn't this dramatically low number, but it was such a reasonable number in the marketplace. It was like a bidding to start from price. Bidding to start from at $4 million, selling for $4,207,000. Deborah Smith, or as she goes by as Cuddy, she did a tremendous job in sort of going through the scenarios with the seller. It's interesting. I can always tell when somebody has a relationship with their client through, again, this isn't a long-term relationship that she's known him for 50 years or whatever it is, but a relationship being that client just knows that she's looking out for his best interest. It's so easy to have a conversation that he doesn't want to hear at that point because he knows that she's trying to do everything in her power. Like, we had to have a pretty harsh conversation because he bought it as a flip property. These issues ended up happening and he lost a substantial amount of money, I believe, had to put in excess of $500,000 into it of his own savings to close the property based on what was owed. But so a really difficult transaction, but again, we really do believe we got the best result of it because we drove a much higher volume over the number of weeks leading into auction. It was sold prior to auction day because we got a buyer that was all cash. We could have taken it all the way through to auction, but again, a lot of people wanted their own due diligence. Even though we did it up front, they wanted their own people to go look at it and were uncomfortable putting in offers, and they wanted to make it really, really contingent. Our seller was looking for a level of certainty, and that offer presented that. So that was really, really great. The property sold at auction day. This property is in Southern California. Justin Green and Chad Whitfeld, the listing agents, they're our number one auction performers in all of North America from a volume perspective, based out of Southern California, primarily calling expired listings and getting auctions that way by offering them something a little bit more unique. This property here is in Calle Bella Loma, San Clemente. Bidding to start from on this property was 1.5, selling for $1,835,000. Total number of registered bidders on this property was 4 registered bidders. Biggest challenge with this is you had 4 decision makers, 4 sellers. They'd been left the home. One of the four brothers, and then their wives were included, obviously, in the conversations as well. And one of the brothers was living in the property, didn't want to move out because his credit score wasn't great and all of this type of stuff. And the other brothers wanted the property to be sold. So you had one voice really against everything that we were doing, another 2 that ultimately were there, and another one was just like, I don't care. But this property here was on the marketplace traditionally. They'd received an offer, of a ridiculously high number. Sellers' expectations obviously skyrocketed at that point. They thought they'd won the lottery, but because it was contingent to the cow flying over the moon, is that it fell out, just like we're seeing a great deal. Again, keep in mind that false economy, guys. I don't want to keep saying it and be a broken record, but keep that in mind. But we had our work cut out here. That offer was like $400,000 higher than what we ended up selling the property for. It was just so false, it's not funny. The appraisal was lower, that when they were getting financing, the appraiser came out and gave them an appraisal that was lower than what we ended up selling it for, which was over 1.8. So as you can appreciate, it was just one of those sky high situations that was creating that false economy. But again, we had to, we were meeting with the sellers 3 times a week to explain where the low offers were coming in at, or where the offers were, or where buyers' feedback was, and other comparativables, because it was a tough situation because this property was basically a big 2-bedroom home. Spectacular views, really needed to be flipped, obviously, with the work that needed, but those views really gave it the cornerstone. But again, property live auction, 4 registered bidders, and a great result. Now, Another property that sold is a property in Piedmont Avenue in Montrose in California. Kathy Clark, Brenna Van Hugenston, and the listing agents, you would have heard their name before on the podcast. They've been interviewers on here as well, same as Justin and Chad. But bidding start from 1.2, selling for 1.4. This was a pretty simple, straightforward situation. Put it on the marketplace in the first week and got an offer. $1.4 million, which was $100,000 over what the seller was looking for. Everybody else was around that 1.3 mark. So it made a great deal of sense and gave very big clarity to that. Now, as far as another property, we've got a property in Spruce Ridge Drive in Stewart, Florida, with Joe Batag. This is our third auction with Joe over there. Bidding start from $250, selling for $300,000. Again, pretty straightforward. Selling prior to auction, had been on the marketplace for a very, very, very long time. It had 4 price reductions on it. It was 6 months, I believe, on the marketplace. We ended up selling it for very close to what it was previously listed at by just drawing a larger crowd into it. And again, just same old story, guys. I'm not really reinventing the wheel here in that sense. We have a property here in Los Gatos in Northern California. This is with Kim Pham. Kim was actually our first auction that we ever did in Northern California out in the Sunset District. Kim flips her own properties. So again, it's a real testament when the seller and the agent is also coming and using our auction platform. This is one here in Glenwood Drive. Bidding to start from on this property was $700. Sold it for $780,000, and a remarkable result there. It was on the marketplace for quite a long time traditionally. And had fallen out a few times and just weren't getting the volume of interest, because in Los Gatos there's this area that is like sort of up in the tree line. And it just really doesn't get the volume. So we had to get more people up there. Saw what a great value for money it was in the area. And it was an easy transaction once you got volume there. Jesse Salas, who's a frequent person on the podcast. Jesse had one in Southern California in Temecula. Kaye Ulva. It's interesting, these properties though, guys. If you were to take a property in Temecula at the moment, based on the insurability of most of the properties and just the nature of where it is, that marketplace gets very hot very quickly, and then it gets very, very cold very, very quickly. Not in a temperature perspective of feeling, but I mean market conditions. And you've seen Jesse's actually got quite a number of auctions coming up. One in Murrieta, a couple more in Temecula, where he's reaching out to people that have expired. And he's managing to get results that are higher than what properties were previously listed. This one bidding to start from 1.4, selling for $1,590,000. This we had 4 offers on the property prior to auction day, and again, this one was just head and shoulders above everyone else. So we had to obviously take that one, but it gave it a very clear-cut conversation to the sellers about what was going on. But also we have another property in Rancho Santa Fe. I'm going to say this wrong. I'm not even going to pronounce the street name. I'm going to get it wrong. It's Liana di Calao. I don't know. But Maddox and Stephanie Shree-Pitch, they had a great live auction that it hasn't closed yet, but I'll talk about that one next month when it does close. This one was sold after auction and property, and it sold for $10.7 million. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up and have brought it up on previous episodes is because, again, the close got actually delayed on this one. Bidding start from at $8 million, sold for $10.7 million. It actually sold after auction to a buyer that actually was a bidder at the auction itself, and the seller said no to their original offer, and then they had they thought about it. They didn't want to lose out on the property and then increase their offer afterwards. They'd previously seen the property as well, but again, it was a really great result from them, and it was an after auction transaction. But as I mentioned, guys, September has been a little bit of a better month, but I think that one of the things that we need to be conscious about as we move forward is that people believing that, the interest rates are going to continue to come down and that's going to change the marketplace, and, these hopes for what is going to happen. Now, I don't believe that a 10% rise is on the horizon, but putting into perspective the seller, well, maybe we get a 2% rise, maybe we get a 3% rise, maybe we get a 10% rise. But all of that to be said, that all can be dampened by other people putting their properties on the marketplace, because in most markets, inventory levels are still, yes, they're ticking up, but they are still historically way, way, way lower. I think we need to remind people about the levels that people had, inventory at, or the levels that areas had inventory at before COVID. In some of the marketplaces where it was a little bit slower prior to COVID. I think that if you went back and had a look at the normal inventory levels, is that it would be double what it is now. And if we get into that situation, again, it's just going to mean more competition for their property and less of an outcome, regardless of the marketplace going up or down. So, all in all, September a bit of a neutral month. Let's see what October brings. But optimistic as we move into October. Optimistic with the volume of listings that we're listing at the moment. And definitely, if you are sitting there struggling with your traditional transaction and want to change it up rather than just do a price reduction, reach out to us. Happy to help. But either way, thanks for tuning in. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.